Hi, this is Alex Helmbrecht, and welcome to the FARcast. I'm joined here this morning with my co-host Daniel Binkard and our guest of the day, Dr. Tara Wilson, who's an associate professor of counseling. So thanks for joining us, Tara. Really appreciate having you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is quite an honor to be here. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, you bet. So, Tara, how long have you been here at CSC, and what are the classes that you currently teach?
Yeah. Well, so I've been teaching full-time at Chadron. I'm going into my 6th year. But before that, I went here for my master's degree. So I suppose been there for an extra 2 years. But if you count just teaching, full-time, 6 years now.
And what are the courses that you're teaching?
So classes I'm teaching right now, I'm teaching internship, a couple sections of that. And so what internship is in the counseling program. At the very end of our students' programs, they start working with clients, and that's what I get to do as far as internship goes. I get to supervise them, meet with them weekly as they're working with clients for the first time, really all across the state of Nebraska, which is pretty exciting to see all the different places that they're working. And I'm also teaching family counseling as well, so that's one of my favorite classes to teach, and I tell the students that they definitely know I like that class.
And why is that?
My dissertation was about family counseling, and actually it started in my undergraduate degree. I had a family communication class, and it was just fascinating the way that families talk, the way that some families mesh, some families don't. Just the way families interact, I suppose, looking across them. So it's really neat to see that in family counseling. So, and part of family counseling is it's looking at yourself and your own family and being able to apply the concepts that you're learning about in the class to your own family. And so I get to learn a lot about my students. But then I get to help them think about those different concepts from different family theorists and apply those to their life as well, too. So they really take their knowledge of their family to a professional level. And, of course, that's what they take on to their clients as well, too.
So this is a graduate level class?
It is, yeah.
So when you say, and maybe I'm making the wrong assumption, but when you say talking about your own family dynamics or your family communication or whatever, is the implication that the students are talking about like their parents and their siblings if they have them, or about their own families? Because if they're graduate students, some of them may have children.
Yeah, so you have your family of origin, and so that would be your parents. And then, of course, they have so we'll create a genogram in the class, and the genogram goes back at least 3 generations, so at least to the grandparent level, if not beyond that if they can. But yeah, so we talk about the family of origin, which would be the initial family that you were born and raised in. And of course, families get interesting. It's not always mom, dad, kids. It
Sure.
could be a lot of different variations there, of course. And then you have your nuclear family. And so that would be the family that you're with, who lives in the house currently or who you're most connected with. So if you have kids, if you're married, then they take on that nuclear family role. And then you start another family of origin if you have kids.
Sure.
And so,
okay.
So it's fascinating to see if we create a genogram, which essentially is like a tree of the family, and we talk about different relationship dynamics and how, let's say, grandma and grandpa had a relationship dynamic that maybe is passed down to the next generation, and then so on and so forth. Or there's a relationship dynamic that kind of stopped at one point in the family, and we kind of talk about how those different changes were made in the family. So.
That sounds pretty neat. I've just got one last question on this, and maybe a bit of an observation. I always feel like our counseling program is unique because there is a lot of, granted, every program here has a lot of faculty to student interaction, but it seems like almost in the counseling program, there's that teacher and pupil relationship, but it's almost like a partnership because you're talking a lot like social work. You're talking to these students all the time. Not to imply that faculty don't talk to students. I know that's not the case, but you're working very closely with these students.
Yeah, absolutely. And for it being an online program, we're still meeting all the time. Or the assignments, they do have a more personal note. I think that's because counseling is very relationship based. Mm-hmm. So if I were to go to a counselor and if I didn't connect with them or didn't like them, I'm not going to go again. Or if I'm going to go to a counselor, if work is going to be done, I'm going to have to share some of my deep, dark secrets. And so that same kind of relationship dynamic, we start building the importance of building relationships in the counseling program. And all of our students in the counseling program are grad students, at least at the clinical mental health and the school counseling level. So it's more, they come in with so much knowledge as it is. Mm-hmm. They have, a lot of times I'm learning from the students. They're doing some really great things at schools across the state or at agencies across the state. And so really taking on that teacher-learner role of our students are not, I mean, they're coming in with knowledge. It's not just a knowledge dump, I suppose, on our students. It's really a partnership. So
Awesome.
yeah.
So considering that it is such a person-to-person, traditionally face-to-face kind of environment, how do you deal with it when it's primarily online, working with the students? Like, what are some of the challenges? How do you overcome those?
Yeah. Well, okay, so it's not technically a challenge. A huge benefit was when the pandemic hit, we were already online,
Right.
which is great because it's so fascinating. Pre-pandemic, all of our students, the majority of our students were doing face-to-face work. And if every now and then they got some telehealth or some online kind of counseling, those are things we really highlighted on and, tell the rest of the students so we can all learn from these experiences. But when the pandemic hit, it was such a natural flow because everything was online.
Yeah.
And so currently I've got students who they haven't actually seen a client in person. It's been all over telehealth. And as a profession, we've really had to grow. We've done telehealth now, of course, in our profession for a while, but it wasn't so intensified. I mean, the pandemic obviously intensified it.
Sure.
So it's been really nice. So the same platform that we use in our counseling program online that we meet for supervision, we're talking about confidential information. So we have to have it as confidential as possible. We have to take all those different precautions. That's actually a lot of times the same platform our students are using as well too.
Okay.
And so it's been a huge benefit, especially right in the current moment with the pandemic, and our students still aren't all going back face-to-face. It's a lot of times it's a hybrid. Some are face-to-face, and some are only online as well too. So I suppose challenges are, I mean, we meet with our students right away over Zoom. We always do an interview. Every single student has to go through an interview with a counseling faculty. And so we build that initial connection, but after that, there's a lot of emails or some of our content courses are purely online. Most of our courses, a lot of our courses have some sort of a synchronous component to them, so they see us. So I mean, I suppose I'm trying to think of a challenge, but there's just so many benefits to that because our students they're all over. We've got students that would never have been able to access counseling had we not been online. So we have students in Montana on ranches, down on the sandhills on ranches, and it's just fascinating to see. So, our students, I've got a student down in the sandhills, and so she could join in a meeting with folks from Omaha, and then in the afternoon see clients that are scattered throughout Nebraska, and then in the afternoon join us for group supervision, all from the comfort of her home. But she's been having some amazing experiences. Yeah. So I think probably the biggest challenge of having an online program maybe is those nonverbal communication messages we send.
Sure.
And so so we have to record in the counseling program, we have to record mock sessions and whatnot. But most of the time it's from the face up. And so we're not able to see like if our knees are crossed and it's more closed communication, those of that nature. Those are things that the students will just have to report on.
Okay.
So that might be the biggest challenge, but it's really minimal considering what we do. I think maybe a couple of years ago I would have thought there was more challenges to it, but with the pandemic, it's and with grad students, a lot of them are out there working full time and they just can't get to Chadron, or the weather doesn't allow them to get to Chadron. And so, not only do our students meet over over a synchronous online platform, we see everything. We know what's going on in Omaha. We know what's going on in Alaska. We had some students from Alaska. It's been just fascinating to see what's happening across the country.
Yeah, I imagine so. We kind of get that small world. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Tara, talk a little bit about your educational background.
So education, how far back?
Well,
where do you want to start
Where
here?
did you start kindergarten? No.
That's an easy question.
Where'd you go to college? Because we'll probably talk to you a little bit about kind of pre-college stuff later. But where'd you go to college and do your post bachelor stuff?
Yeah. So I went to I'm actually from the area, but I chose to go to University of Nebraska Lincoln. For the very important reason of wanting to have season tickets to see the Huskers. So that was my final deciding factor.
You're probably not the only student who's ever done that.
Yeah, that was it. And I made use of those tickets. Yeah, we went to, I only missed the Thanksgiving games because I was back here watching them. So I went to UNL for a degree in communication. And so I have that degree in communication. And then I ended up back here at Chadron and in the clinical mental health field. Mostly because I wanted to be closer to family, which I never, when I was a teenager, I said, I will never come back to this area. Absolutely not. And I learned the lesson right away that never say never, because that's the exact same thing that's going to happen. So not only did I come back for a master's degree, here I am now living here and probably going to retire here. So then I came back here for a clinical mental health degree. Back then it was called community counseling. And then I worked as a school counselor, and I also did clinical mental health counseling as well too. And then I went to the University of Wyoming. So not only did I want to leave the small town growing up, I then went to most likely the only college in the nation that is just a grown-up small town, which is Laramie. There's a Walmart. Denver's a little bit closer, but it's the most rural, isolated state. So for me, wanting to live big city, downtown Chicago, Denver, New York, yeah, I chose Laramie for my PhD.
I have some friends who went to college there, and they always call it Laradise.
Yep.
Not Laramie, it's Laradise.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be, because in the wintertime, a perfect place to do a PhD because you can't leave. So, I mean, you're going to have a blizzard and you literally can't leave. So, yeah, if you're going to write a dissertation, you might as well be stuck in the place you're.
So your doctorate program was not online; it was
No,
face-to-face.
face-to-face. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, it was face-to-face.
Very good.
Yeah, which is.
Well, tell us a little bit about before then. Let's see. Yeah, so you grew up in the Chadron area. Did you always know that you wanted to work in counseling? Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, no, absolutely not. I did not know I wanted to work in counseling. At least I don't think so. So, of course, I knew these questions were coming, so I had to think about it because I've had this question before. And before I've answered it, I just wrote it off. I thought, no, it just happenstance. Because I always thought the reason I wanted to go into counseling, well, I not really wanted to go. But I came back to Chadron for my master's degree because when I was at Lincoln, during my last couple of years at Lincoln, my niece got cancer. It was great that I was in Lincoln because it was up in Minneapolis, so I was able to make that trip quite a bit. And so that's where that whole thought of, I really don't want to be away from family. I want to be around my family as much as possible. She's doing phenomenal now. How old is she? 12, 13, 14? I don't know. She's a freshman in high school. Yeah, freshman already. So she's
right
been in
along,
remission
yeah.
for quite a bit. Yeah. No, it's actually kind of fun. We just put up a play set because back when she was a year and a half old, and so she had a Make-A-Wish play set, which she no longer plays with, and so now my kids do. Yeah, so it's kind of coming full circle. Yeah. So anyway, that's why I chose Chadron, is because it was the closest to family. And it was either I applied to have a GA-ship here so I could have my master's degree paid for. And that summer, I came back home, worked at the pool as a lifeguard. And that summer I decided, not only do I need to get into the counseling program, the clinical mental health degree program here at Chadron, I also need that GA to pay for my school. And if I don't do that, my plan was to go up to Rapid and work for Habitat for Humanity. And so I always thought the reason I'm in this degree is because I looked through the catalog, and this was the area that this was the degree that sounded the most fascinating to have a master's degree. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But actually, as I was thinking about it, I remembered when I was in high school, and I don't know what was going on. I mean, I was the last child, and so definitely rebellion. Small town. I wanted out of there. I wanted nothing to do with it. And so I went to my mom and I was like, Mom, something's not right. Like, I'm just down in the dumps. Something's not right. And she said, I'll make an appointment. And so I was 16 or 17. She made an appointment for me to talk to a medical doctor. And I remember I told him, I was like, it was weird talking about my own mental health with a medical doctor. And I said, well, I'm just kind of down in the dumps. Things don't feel right. And I remember the assessment. She gave me an assessment to see where I fell on the depression rating scale. And it was for adults. And I remember walking away from that thinking, that was so weird, because they asked me about work. Like, how's work? Do you find enjoyment in work? I'm like, I'm 17 years old. Yes, I find enjoyment in work. That's the only way I can get paid. Like, work is great right now. Talk to me about school. Like, school's terrible. Not too terrible. It was fine. But anyway, so I remember her bringing the results back to me on this assessment that I just thought that really has nothing to do with how I feel right now, because the questions just weren't relevant in my currently. So what she said, well, here's a card for a counselor in town, and I don't think you're kind of on the border, but I really don't feel comfortable giving you any kind of medication yet, because I don't think you're at that state where that's needed. Go to a counselor if you need it. Come back. I never called. I was like, no, I'm not going to go to the counselor and tell him what's going on. That would be weird. So I think what I learned, and I think that experience right there something had a huge shift because I was just looking through a few months ago. I was looking through my yearbook, and in the yearbook it said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said I wanted to be a psychologist that owned my private practice. I don't remember where I said I wanted to be working though. I don't think I said here. And so somehow that shift happened from me going to the medical doctor, filling out an assessment, not going to a counselor, then suddenly wanted to become a psychologist. And so kind of similar path. Now I'm a counselor. I obviously don't own my private practice. I work here at the college. But I think what I realized is that, maybe I guess a part of me wants to reach out to those kids that need to go and talk to somebody. But, the first step for me going to a doctor, I think, was the hardest step. So to do that all over again and talk to another behavioral health professional.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of fascinating. So because my internship was integrated behavioral health care, which means that I was interning as a counselor, getting that initial training in a medical setting. And what happened is we would get referrals from doctors, but instead of the patient having to call us, we actually are able, like the counselors called the patient to schedule that appointment. And so you don't have to make that call twice. You don't have to call your doctor and then call the person. So had that happened, I might have actually followed through and went to a counselor way back then. But
it's always funny those little things that happen or don't happen.
Yeah.
never
So it's
know.
kind of fascinating too, because even before that, I thought, no, I'm just kind of here as a counselor. But I think that experience had a lot more of an impact on me. At the time, I didn't think anything of it, but
Yeah, you never know, I guess.
yeah, I'm still here. There I am.
Right.
So even though, I guess technically you are an alumna, but because you got your graduate degree here, but didn't do your undergrad here, you have deep ties to CSC. I think you mentioned some folks who are listening to this might remember you as a child running through the library. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I'm sure they probably have some fun stories to tell too. So my grandmother, I think, and I had to look this up to know because I don't remember, of course, back then, but I think she started working at CSC a couple years before I was born. And so I remember she worked down in the basement of the library. And so it's funny, I'm sure we always came during the day, but I just remember coming to Chadron at nighttime. I think it's because we went to the basement of the library and there's no windows down there.
Yep.
But I just remember coming and just as a kiddo, and she worked in like the children's curriculum. So she only had children's books that were in the area that she worked in. So my mom and her would chat, and Alicia, my sister and I, she's too close to my age for us to really get along back then. Now we're best friends. But I'm sure we probably chased each other. I'm sure we probably did laps in that basement of the library. They have
sure.
It makes really nicely for laps. And so I'm sure there's we were probably going crazy. We always picked out books to read, but I'm pretty sure those were read at home. We probably were just kind of more raising heck around one another. So
And what was your grandmother's name?
Barbara Carson.
Okay.
Barbara Carson, yeah. So she retired. I was at Lincoln when she retired. And so in the early 2000s, she retired from here after 31 years of working here. Yeah.
My first
Fascinating.
beat when I was a Cub reporter on the Eagle when I was a student was the library. And so I had to check in every week, and the director was Mr. Brennan. I
Yeah.
can't remember his first name, Tom maybe. And I had to write a story about how the library got new carpet. That was the lead story.
That's riveting.
I'll never forget that. It was my first published story in the
No.
college paper. New
You always
library,
remember
the
those.
carpet. Heavy-hitting journalism right
Yeah.
there.
Well, there's not. Yeah, it's funny because like the stairway. I remember the stairway, and not a lot's changed since I was
Oh, yeah.
since I was a kid with that. I remember just going down to the dungeon of the basement, which is where she was. But it was also kind of, I don't know. I just remember always going down there, unless we were lucky enough. And she unlocked the basement door. You know how you can drive down to the library. Sometimes she called and she said, "I'll unlock that door." And so then we would park down there. Like we felt really special
Oh,
because we
yeah,
got to walk
secret
through. And we
entry.
didn't have to go through
Yeah.
through the stairs. Yeah.
The library is the featured building in the most recent alumni magazine. And there's a photo. When's that photo from? Maybe the 80s?
I always
70s
forget
or
the
80s?
timeline because they had the stairs to the main entrance that were just open. They'd
Yeah.
get covered in ice
Yeah.
every winter. And if it was in the late 80s or sometime in the 80s that they enclosed that. But it's been enclosed for a number of years now.
So when that came, my wife Brittany saw it, and she's like, "That's not the library," because it didn't have the
Yeah.
vestibule.
It does look weird.
It really does.
Looks familiar to some people who grew up with it that way, and then for all the younger ones of us, it's just something off.
We had I remember when we would visit Grandma, it was always going up those stairs. And they were, I mean, in the wintertime, it was always icy. And I mean, those were treacherous stairs.
Same with the Klein
That's the
Center
story.
stairs.
Yeah, they were kind of intense. And they were steep, too, if I remember right. At least they were steep for my little
Yeah,
two-year-old
because it's kind of
legs.
like you got to get up to an upper level almost the
Yeah.
way it's sloped and built.
Chances
Yep.
are, if stairs were built on campus in the 60s, they are treacherous.
That seems to be the theme. Oh, man.
But as far as roots to CSC, I don't think my dad, he played football here too,
excellent.
which is so cool. So he always talks about it. He's like, Tara, I didn't play. I warmed the bench, like that bench, and I did a mighty fine job of it. But anyway, that's kind of cool too. So I don't know. I need to go through like past CSC like football things and see if I can find his picture or whatnot. I have to
Well, we've got
remember
just
when
the
he was
man
here.
for you
yeah.
down
I
in
know,
the
I might
basement.
have to.
Con Marshall will help you
Yeah,
out.
you're in the right.
Yeah,
You're in the right building.
I might have to before I head out today. I might have to look him up and see his picture. So
And
That's
you'll
always
get
neat.
the whole history too, everything that you didn't know and that you.
we'll see if I have
It's
enough
good
time
stuff.
For that.
Yeah, set aside about 45 minutes to
Yeah.
an hour, but you'll be good. You'll learn more.
Then I'll
than-
know. Then I'll
It's
have
all
the
good
answer.
history.
How long did he play? He won't be honest with me. He's like, no, I didn't do anything but warm the bench. Well, I don't know. I want to see some game tapes.
Yeah. Well, so we'll swing back around to some of the job duties that you have, because in addition to the what you do for teaching, you're also the co-director of the, we're going to get this right, Behavioral Health Education Center of Nebraska Panhandle, which is a bit of a mouthful, and it's even got a fun acronym for it. But tell us, what is that and what goes on there?
Yeah, so we're going to say Beacon for short, Behavioral Health Education Center of Nebraska. We just have always called it Beacon. We actually have, it was a big push to say, Beacon for short, and then so we even have a newsletter that comes out, and it's actually the Beacon, like a lighthouse.
The Beacon Beacon.
Yeah, the Beacon Beacon.
It's a little too on the nose.
No, it's kind of neat. I like it. So Beacon is kind of fun. So Beacon Omaha, of course, was the first and foremost that started about 11 years ago. And then they had a few years back, Beacon Kearney got started. And then they realized that Beacon Kearney, it was supposed to cover the rural areas. And if like Kearney is still pretty far east, it's not real,
Oh, yeah.
coming from Chadron, it's not rural.
We need a panhandle branch.
And so
really.
then exactly what they said. They said, well, not only that, we need that rural aspect, or maybe frontier, I suppose, if we want to get technical. I think a lot of people say that this is more than just rural or frontier, but
We're technically frontier and remote. Then
Frontier,
what,
yeah,
what was
far.
that classification from?
The Department of Ag.
There we go.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not going to argue with them.
it's
So
official.
I'll take it. We're far. Yeah. So Beacon. So it actually got started back when they had the Safe Haven Act legislature. Do you remember any of that? So what that did, and I'm sure there was more to it, but what affected us the most is the legislation. I think it came out of a legislation through the Nebraska unicameral, and they said that any parents or caregivers or guardians, no questions asked, if they don't believe that they are fit to care for a child, they can drop their child off at the hospital, and then they'll find, the hospital then be responsible, or the state, for finding a place for the kiddo. So in theory, I think if you think about it, you have parents, if they're to the point where they want to drop their kiddo off at a hospital, it's pretty tough. Like, parenting is hard. I've got a 2 and a 4-year-old. It's real hard more, some days than others. But if it's to the point where you're thinking, I need to drop them off at a hospital, there might be some safety concerns. So the idea behind it made a lot of sense. I think the legislation wanted to address a critical need that we had in our state. Clearly, there was a need to have that. And I think the idea was it would just be younger kids. And so maybe, after a few days after birth, a few weeks after birth, you might be thinking, no, I just can't handle this. I need to find a safer home. But what they found is they actually had more and more older kids being dropped off. So then you have like 16, 17-year-olds. You're not an adult until 19 in Nebraska. And so if you think about it, like if a baby's dropped off, then you start working with the system to get them placed and find a safe home for them. But if you drop off a 16, 17-year-old, that 16, 17-year-old is probably going through some pretty incredibly tough things. And so then not only that, then you're trying to find a placement for that kiddo. And it's just kind of a tough situation all the way around. So what we had is we actually had the founders of Beacon that they said, well, that's what behavioral health is. We have this whole aspect of behavioral health where we work with parents and families and caregivers on the behavioral health needs of their kiddos. If there's some behavioral health issues, we're trained to do that. We're trained to work with parents to identify behaviors, targeted behaviors that need addressed, and how we can work together and support them to, to work with them before they get to that point, that breaking point of, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And so they said, so let's establish a behavioral health education center in Nebraska. And our mission will be to recruit and retain behavioral health professionals. And these will be the professionals that, of course, address all areas of mental health, but especially, we're mindful of those in the early days, that behavioral health, the behavioral aspect of kiddos, working to modify behaviors, working with like timeout strategies, working with kiddos that are defiant and not listening and not behaving. So that's where it came from as far as Beacon goes. So it's been kind of fascinating to see what it's evolved from then. So since then it's evolved. Now we're partnering. We have all of the behavioral health professional education programs on board with Beacon, and they meet together through what's called NEBHEAD, the Nebraska Behavioral There's so many acronyms.
Yeah, there are.
Nebraska Behavioral Health Educational Partnership. And so we meet with, so I'm part of that as well too, in addition to Beacon Panhandle. And so we meet with people in Kearney and Doane and Creighton. And so anywhere from that psychiatry program that trains medical doctors to prescribe medication, to physician assistants, to psychiatric nurse practitioners. Then we have, of course, Chadron counselors, substance use counselors. There's a lot of different behavioral health people in our state that are all working together, which is really great that we're, we're taking this and moving
communication.
forward. Yeah. So Beacon Panhandle was brought on is because we recognize, the Beacon folks also recognize that the needs of the Panhandle are just so much different than what we have, of course, like say in Omaha and whatnot. And so we are very mindful of being remote, being rural, and seeing what our needs are specifically out here. So there's a lot of neat things that we get to do. In the fall, we usually have a webinar series. We just started it last year. We're going to continue it this year. And it's focused just on rural behavioral health. So we're bringing in experts from our area because they know how to provide behavioral health services in a rural area best because they're working in a rural area. And we allow them, we give them different topics to talk on and talk about how, like last year, it was all about how you could start a behavioral health practice in a rural area. Because that's different. Like in Omaha, Lincoln, our students could just go to an agency. They have a job. It's a real smooth transition. But if you're in like Arthur, Nebraska, I mean, you're in a town of, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred. I don't even think it's a couple hundred.
Sparse.
Yeah, what do you do? There's not like an agency you can just start working for. So you really have to not only have the behavioral health training, like how to be a counselor, you also need to know the business sense of starting up a practice and whatnot. So we have that. We brought conferences out to the Panhandle. That was really exciting before the pandemic hit because we had one here at Chadron State. We had one at WNCC. Now we'll have one, I hope, next year if we can meet in a face-to-face setting in Alliance. And that's just so great because instead of always having to travel to the eastern side of the state to, for like the important meetings or the big conferences, things of that nature, we bring folks here. And so instead of having the whole conference travel, we're able to actually just have our few speakers travel out here and actually meet with our folks out here. So, and then it's very specific. So instead of going to a conference and saying, here's this best practice, how to work with, I don't know, whatever we do as counselors, here to work with like this specific situation. What we often have to do is say, okay, that's really great and it works really well, like in a larger city where we have access to resources, but here in the Panhandle, we have a lot more distance between resources. We don't have as many resources. So we're actually able to prep the presenters to say, okay, we're working out here in rural Nebraska. Be mindful of that. How can we actually make this work out here in rural Nebraska without the resources that maybe, say, the larger cities have? So it's been really great and very specific to this part of the country. So,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Well, it kind of part of our next question, asking about your interest in rural mental health and how that began, but rural folks, are they receptive generally to getting help if they need it?
I think
Might
so.
be a loaded question.
No, I think so, and it's been kind of interesting. Are they receptive? Absolutely, I think so. But it looks different. So, I think I remember back when I was being trained and reading the textbooks, and there's certain things we do as counselors. So we have to build rapport. We have to build that connection. So we can't just start the first. Well, we always have to know why they're there and what the presenting problems are. But in order for clients to really be truthful and tell us what's really going on, we're not talking about usually great things that we're excited to talk about in counseling.
Yeah.
So we have to have our clients that are willing to share with us some of their, like I said, their deep, dark secrets. And anyway, so it looks really different. in a larger city, I think, and that's how the textbooks are written. Like in a larger city, our clients don't want, we have to honor confidentiality. We even have to here, of course,
Right.
but we have to honor confidentiality. You want to go to a counselor and not have them know anything about you. You don't want to have them know anything about, you don't want to know anything about them, vice versa. In a rural setting, we can't just not know about one another. And so it's kind of interesting because the textbooks are like, yes, honor, we want to maintain those dual relationships. We don't want to have dual relationships. But here in rural Nebraska, it's not only do we have dual relationships, we have multiple relationships.
Yeah,
It's hard to go to a counselor without knowing something about them or being connected in some way.
See them at the grocery
Exactly.
store.
I was just thinking the simple thing you see is, we all shop at Walmart or something at one point or another in a given week. And I mean, yeah, you see your counselor there, different situation.
I know, it's so fun. So I talked to providers across the state, and there was a counselor in Kearney that said, oh, that was so weird. I saw my first client, because it's always, when are you going to see your first client out and about? And she's like, I saw my first client at Walmart. And the rest of us out here just had to laugh, and we thought, it's not a matter of if we're going to see a client, it's how many clients are we going to see?
I live next door to mine.
Yeah. And so everyone's different, and every counselor kind of handles it differently, but every person's different. So a lot of times they want to have that. I mean, I'm kind of like that. I'm from this area. I want to know how that connection is built. Like if I get to know someone who just moved here, I'm usually looking to build a connection with them, or find out like, oh, we have our grandparents, or whatever it might be. I'm always looking for that connection. So out here, I think we kind of expect those dual relationships. We want to know, okay, we obviously know each other. Let's know how we know each other, and then we have that trust built. But yeah, I think as a general rule, it's so interesting to see, because I do some private practice on the side as well too. So it's so interesting to see clients that come to counseling. It's, obviously mental health doesn't discriminate against anything. Anyone and everyone can have a need to meet with a counselor about whatnot. And yeah, I mean, everyone, anyone that needs it comes. I think there's this, it's well noted in research that there's a stigma for going to counselors in a rural area, but I think we're making some pretty big steps to minimize that. I think we're having some really good public awareness campaigns about consumers that have received counseling services, and that's a huge step in the right direction. If I learn that one of my good friends went to a counselor, I'm more receptive to go to a counselor myself.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge step, and that's what happens in rural America. I mean, if it's really word of mouth. So if they're trustworthy because your farmer down the road went to them as well too, and things worked out well, then you're going to continue seeing them. So, So I think they're receptive, and I think especially now people are becoming more and more receptive. And maybe because of telehealth, now we can actually get to a counselor because we don't have to drive on the dirt roads for 2 hours. And yeah,
Sure.
So we're coming more and more. We're making some pretty big movements, which is exciting.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Tara, kind of switching gears a little bit, going to some of your other interests, but most may not know that you're an avid runner. Where have you all competed? I think you said you've run 4 or 5 half marathons, maybe?
I have, not a year. I think avid runner might be a bit of a stretch.
A runner.
Okay, a runner. No, because if you would ask, again, going back to high school, if you would ask me in high school if I'm an avid runner, I would have said absolutely, because in high school, there was no way I would run a mile. I wouldn't run like a half mile unless I don't know, had an angry bull going after me and I had to run and get away from it. And that probably wouldn't have fared very well for that one. So the question, so I do run for a little bit. I have been running for a little bit. I think it started, when did I start? Probably my master, it wasn't my master's program back here when I got to Chadron. Probably because Lincoln's just too humid for me to run.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah,
It's horrible, isn't it?
It's bad.
Yeah, but so my first one, the first marathon, or half marathon, not marathon. I would never do that. I just don't have the time for a full marathon.
Too far.
Never too far. That's just too much.
The first person who ran it died.
That's how the
that's a
story
good
goes.
start.
Yeah.
And then, hey, let's keep running this.
So there's a good warning. I'm going to take heed to that warning. Just the half for me. We'll see. I don't remember where it was. I can't, but I've ran in Las Vegas. That was fun. It was on a Sunday. And so, we were in Vegas for the weekend. And then the very last night, we're running the half marathon.
So at nighttime?
At nighttime. And so
That
you could see
sounds
the
good.
strip. Yeah. So thank goodness you had people line the strip and they're like, yeah. And they're like cheering you on, because I was exhausted at that point in time. I'd been walking around and seeing the sights. And
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you
there's
walked so
no
much
need.
there.
Yeah, there's no need to finish a weekend in Vegas on 13.1 miles. But we made it. Yeah. Yeah. I remember running, because I went with one of my girlfriends too. And I distinctly remember someone saying, "Oh, walkers are runners too." And there's still runners in our books because there was a couple of times that we just had to walk. We're like, "No, this is not happening. We're not running right now." But the ones that I've done though, it's not a half marathon, but the Run for the Hills that the Northwest Trails Association puts on in Hyper. Man, I think that might be the hardest race I've ever done though. That thing is brutal. I've done that twice now. So the first year I remember finishing it and I thought I was in shape. I thought I could run because I'd been running, all the time before that. And I just couldn't manage those hills. They were horrible. And so then I signed up the next 2 years after that because 2020 happened and no one did anything in 2020. But yeah, so then 2021 happened. So I just ran it in June, I think is when they had it. And I knew it. I knew it was going to be hills. So I prepped on hills. Not only that, I was prepping for a half marathon too. So I thought I'm really going to be okay. I can manage the hills. No. I think I got up like a quarter of the first hill and I was like, nope, not going to happen. I'm not running up this hill. So I'm walking up the hill. But it was kind of fun because after I finished and I finished and I thought, man, I thought I would do better, but it was just too hot and too hilly. I remember there was a couple folks behind me and it was just kind of fun seeing because it was the first time they had ran that race. So I knew what to do. Like I knew how to prepare for it. I knew like the very end you have kind of halfway through, you have these like monster hills. But the folks behind me had not ran it before. And they're like, that was rough. That was brutal. So we might need to rename that race. But no, I ran, the Deadwood Marathon, half marathon. That was fun. That's pretty much all downhill. Not
good.
Really. The first 3 miles are actually, I think 6 miles are actually kind of a very slow increase. But yeah, compared to the Run for the Hills, it was okay.
On the Mickelson Trail there,
Yeah.
that's a lovely finish there in the Deadwood. It's cool.
Yeah. The last 6 miles, it's like all downhill. It's great.
Yeah, it's nice to ride it on your bike too. You don't really have to pedal.
Yeah, see, that would be
sound
good.
good.
Yeah. Probably get further on a bike too than you do running. So there was a couple people going when we were running the Mickelson. There was a couple people going up the hill as we were running down the hill, the last bit. And I just thought, oh my golly, they probably started at Deadwood, and you could tell they're like, oh, we need to get to the top of this hill because it's a straight downhill shot. The last 6 miles, it's great going that way, but those poor bikers going up it.
That adds up after a while.
Yeah, they looked like they were in shape though. They were doing well on it.
Oh,
so.
good.
Yeah, but no, I started running because we have to do self-care as counseling because, especially back when I was practicing full-time, it would just be a full day of hearing, sometimes, there's always ups and downs in life, but it would just be hearing a lot of that vicarious trauma. So you're hearing, some kind of bump, things that aren't the greatest happening. And running was the one thing that I got as far as self-care went, because when I'm running, like I can't think about my clients. Like I got to think about myself I got to breathe.
Right.
There's not a lot of room for me to think about anything else. It's just a great, let it all out.
That's important to do.
Yeah. Well, whenever I can get outdoors and hike around the parks, it's just a good feeling, get out in that fresh air.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just hiked up Sea Hill the other day too. So just
That used to be one of the questions we'd ask at the end. How many times would you say you've been up Sea Hill?
Me? Oh, I can't even count at this point. Yeah, no, way too many. So
You've got a few extra years of it growing up here. Yeah.
I did. Yeah. In fact, I was just up on Sea Hill with Dr. Helmbrecht.
Oh, yes,
So,
I know her.
I heard you might hear. I don't know if she told you, but yeah, we. I don't know why I thought I knew what I was doing. I'm like, oh, let's go on this path, and I think it was more like a game trail, but it looked like maybe it was a hiking trail. No,
Yeah.
it wasn't. It wasn't a trail, and so suddenly I just randomly asked. I was like, oh, we're kind of off the path here. What's
Those-
poison ivy
those
look like?
deer.
And she's like, it looks like this that we're standing in right now, and I'm like, oh, okay,
Nice.
well, let's back up here. So, but yeah, too many times, but it's a good feeling to get up there. So.
Yeah, it is. Any other interests outside of work that you like to share?
Oh goodness. There's a lot of things I do. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old.
I imagine that's the big thing.
Yeah. Any extra minute I can spend with them, I'm going to spend with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I don't think. We read a lot of Dr. Seuss books. I don't think that's an interest of mine, but definitely have made
It's
a
good
go at it
practice.
lately. Yeah. No, I like to play pool. I like to cribbage, pitch, things of that nature.
Sure.
So yeah, those are kind of the big interests when I have time away from the kids, which doesn't happen very often.
Come by the office sometime. We'll play a game of cribbage. I have a board over there. So.
Oh, what about pitch? Do you guys play pitch?
I never learned it, and every time
Yeah.
I tried to learn the rules, I just got so frustrated. I don't know why, but yeah, I've never learned.
I know.
I think you.
Yeah, I know how to play. My family plays 4 or 5 point pitch all the time, mainly 5 point.
Yeah.
But certainly I played a lot of 10 point in college. And then people always wanted me to play 13 point, but I don't like 13
It's
point.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. My sister, her family plays 13 point. And so it's always Thanksgiving. We always get together and play pitch. And she's like, let's play 13 point. I'm like, no,
Yeah, I don't
that
understand.
off 3 is not
Yeah.
needed in a game of 10 point.
So in pitch, you have the off jack is a point, and then but in 10 point, but then in 13 point, the off 3, so whatever's card is this is trump, so heart, spade, or whatever. They have that off 3, and it's just impossible. I can't.
And it's worth 3 points.
factor
And so it's
my
a,
brain
it's a
into-
whole
Oh,
nother,
man.
yeah. It's a whole nother.
Not a fan.
Yeah. It's just an entirely different game,
Yeah.
really, in my eyes. I don't know. I haven't played it much, though.
But
so I
5
should like-
point's fun.
See, and I've never done that. I don't think I've ever played 5 point.
Oh,
Can you
it's-
do that with 2 people? Is that?
You could. It's high-low Jack Joker game. So a lot of times you don't always have 5 points out. And in 5 point, the tens, every 10 counts 10 points towards the game total.
Oh,
So there's a lot
yeah.
of counting involved.
It's, yeah.
I'm pretty sure my uncles cheat when they play it. So I
Yeah.
I rarely win.
I kind of know why you have, like, why you wouldn't have started. Because it's very complicated. Like, if you have 6 people in 10 point
It's-
versus 5 people.
Right.
Versus 4 people.
Got to do a lot
And
of math.
then you have different, like, points. Yeah, there's a lot of different variations of pitch. And so.
I think
yeah.
given that, and I remember college kids, I assume they still do, at least to some extent, because when I was going to college, everybody was playing pitch. And we need to have like the CSC pitch tournament, get that going, faculty and staff
used
and
to be a
everybody
pitch club.
and students. Yeah. Well, so all the viewers out there,
Yeah.
somebody needs to get on that.
I wonder
I'm not
if-
going to play, but I know a lot of people seem like they'll have fun.
Yeah, I wonder if
Yeah.
students play cards as much. Right? Maybe that's a
I would
question.
hope so.
You should ask your CSC live workers. You
I
play
will.
cards?
Yeah.
Okay, so Tara, we're at the section of our podcast where we have 5 questions. Just first thing that comes to your head. So,
Yeah.
first one, a favorite book of yours?
Pride and Prejudice, for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Anything Pride and
classic.
Prejudice. Yeah. I read it
With
in high
or
school.
without
and
zombies.
Without. I have never read the zombie ones. I had one person that read zombies, and I couldn't do it. I can't do it. It just completely ruined it for me. But if I hear it's a good book, I won't do it.
The
So
Abe-
traditionalist.
Yeah,
The Abe
very
Lincoln,
much so.
The Abe
Yeah.
Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
I have read
book
that
is
one.
actually pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, I haven't
It's
read
stupid,
that one.
but
it's
it's fun.
very stupid,
Yeah,
but it's
no,
fun.
No.
And it's better than the movie. I'm just going to put
Yeah, the
that
movie's
out.
terrible.
What is a hidden talent of yours?
Yeah, I'm gonna say pass. Can I pass? I don't know. So I knew these questions were coming. I don't know if I have a hidden talent.
You haven't
I think I'm a
discovered it
pretty
yet,
open
then.
person. Yeah, I mean, if I have it, it's hidden to me. So
All right.
yeah,
Well,
I don't
you let us
know.
know if you find it then.
Yeah, okay. I'll
Good
let
luck.
you know.
Tara, what's the best advice you received as a college student?
Probably to wear flip flops in the shower. That's probably the most important thing you
That's
can
important.
do, and I'm gonna share that. Like wear
That's
flip flops.
important.
No, I think. I mean, other than that, very important piece of advice. Just living it up.
Of
Just-
course, at
yeah.
UNL, not at CSC.
No,
You
not
know?
CSC.
Our showers are pristine.
We're much more, better hygiene here. No, I'd say just live it up, live college up. My nephew just started up at SDSU, and I told him, I was like, he's so excited to get out and get finished. And like he took classes in high school, and he's like, I'm gonna finish in 2 years. And I thought, no, like
Have some fun.
go 4 years. So back when I started college, everyone was trying to get done in 4 years because it was usually taking a little bit longer than that. And now he's like, yeah, I'll be done in 2 years. But he's going to be on like a nursing path after that. And I just told him, I was like, just slow down, live it up.
Yeah.
Just make the most of it. This is the last time in your life that, I don't know. For me, next it was kids and responsibilities.
Yeah.
And, there's responsibilities in college, but not as many. So
Sure.
yeah, just make the most of it.
Let's see here. What's your favorite thing to do in the fall? I imagine it involves running on the Mickelson Trail.
Yeah. No, that was in the spring. I only like to run in the spring and fall. I
Okay.
don't like it in the wintertime. Too icy, and in the summertime it's too hot. But no, football kind of takes over my fall
There you
completely. Yeah, every Saturday we're busy. So yeah, that's the fall.
Great.
Okay, Tara, last one. What's the word that comes to your head when you think of Chadron State?
Home. Yeah, which is funny that I say that because this was the one place I thought I'd never end up. And I realized karma, yeah, life has a way of working. If you say never, never, you're going to be there. But it's absolutely home with so many people, not just, I've got so many people in my family that have a degree from here. And just being from the area, this is it. And we're lucky. This is a really cool campus. I've worked at it, I've been a student and I've worked at different campuses, and we really have a gem out here.
Oh, yeah.
Really, like, not only is it not humid, but we've got the state parks, we have Sea Hill. I just can't think of another campus in Nebraska that has anything like what we have here. So
Yeah.
we're very lucky to be here, I think.
Yep, I agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tara.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
You bet.